Asbestos-containing materials hidden within existing products have been in use for thousands of years. In fact, it was mined from rock formation in ancient times as a wick for lamps, tablecloths, textiles, and other useful items. In modern times, asbestos has been used for many products such as fireproofing, pipe insulation, theater curtains, siding, roofing, gaskets and packing, water and sewer pipe, and more. In water and wastewater applications, asbestos cement pipe may contain as much as 20% asbestos or more, which is used as reinforcement for the pipe, much in the same way steel is used to reinforce concrete in bridges and buildings. However, we must understand that the cement used in the pipe can degrade over time, therefore increasing the risk of fiber release. The types of asbestos used are both the serpentine, chrysotile, and amphibole, amosite, and crocidolite. Some people think that asbestos was banned by the EPA, so there is no more asbestos. However, the ban was overturned by the courts, so it is safe to say asbestos is still in existence today in some form or another. In spite of the fact that many manufacturers claim dates when asbestos was no longer contained in their products, their prior product line still contains asbestos. In fact, many companies still have tons of equipment or pipelines. Regulations require that employees must be informed of the presence of asbestos-containing products. In addition, only fully trained individuals should be allowed to perform work with asbestos-containing products or work where fibers may be released in the air. A major fallacy that exists is that no asbestos is released from products such as gaskets, packing, or cementitious materials. The employer must also ensure that proper containment, storage, and labeling of asbestos-containing products are complied with until picked up by an asbestos-certified waste management firm. It's also important to consider the certification, training, and qualifications of any contractors before bidding or starting work with AC pipe or related products. So be sure to obtain copies of any permits, licenses, and training certifications for your due diligence file. If employees will be using respiratory protection, then the employer must develop and implement a full respiratory protection program, including training, physicals, and fit testing at a minimum. The anticipated level of respiratory protection will be dependent on an industrial hygiene prediction of aerosolized levels of an asbestos release. Most asbestos products come from fibrous forms of the mineral. Asbestos fibers have no detectable odor or taste, but can have distinctive colors depending upon the variety, such as white, brown, and blue. The three most common types of asbestos fibers are chrysotile, or white asbestos, which has white fibers accounting for 90 to 95% of U.S. asbestos in use, amosite, which looks brown or gray with straight fibers, and crocidolite, which has blue straight fibers. Be sure to consult the MSDS that comes with your pipe or other asbestos-containing products to ensure that you have a good understanding of the amount of asbestos and other important safety information provided by the MSDS. Under a microscope, asbestos fibers look something like porcupine quills, which allow fibers to travel freely through human tissue, ending up in any number of organs. The most dangerous fibers are the ones which are more easily inhaled deep into the lungs. One of the most important considerations concerning asbestos-related disease is what is known as the latency period, which is the time between exposure and the onset of the disease. Experts agree that there is usually a latent period of 10 to 25 years in some forms of asbestos cancer from initial exposure and onset of disease. However, some workers exposed for 40 years or more may not become ill, whereas others exposed for shorter periods of time will develop disease. The most common disease, asbestosis, is progressive and once it begins is incurable. However, is not cancerous. It essentially clogs the respiratory system by scarring lung tissue. Bronchogenic carcinoma is primarily related to workers with asbestos exposure and also smoke. Mesothelioma and other lung cancers are lethal and have a potential latency period from 20 to 40 years or more. Here is the kicker. If you smoke and work with asbestos, your cancer risk jumps by as much as 93%. So, if you smoke, quit now. It's never too late. Cal OSHA led the way with the development of standards specifically for working with AC pipe and can be found in the Construction Industry Standard for Asbestos, Section 1529, and in the General Industry Safety Orders, Section 5208, California Occupational Safety and Health Regulations 341.17, and Labor Code Section 6501.8, subsection C. The federal OSHA standards can be located in the OSHA's Construction Industry Standard for Occupational Exposure to Asbestos, Subpart Z, 29 CFR 1926.1101 Asbestos. Safety and health professionals use specialized instrumentation and analysis in order to measure the amount of asbestos fibers in the employee's breathing zone. A special filter is attached to an air pump and placed on the employee. The filter is analyzed under a microscope to determine the employee's exposure level. The current permissible exposure level is 0.1 fibers per cc of air over an 8-hour shift, or a short-term exposure of no more than 1 fiber per cc of air over a 30-minute period. We are talking about minute amounts of asbestos here. Compare that, for example, the removal of a composition asbestos flange gasket using a power wire brush, and the fiber release can be as high as 95 fibers per cc of air into the breathing zone of the worker. An important aspect of the standard is the requirement for specific training consisting of a 4-hour initial course and 2-hour annual refresher training. This video is designed to augment AC pipe training and provide safety information in a format useful to trainers and employees alike. Prior to commencing work with AC pipe, the employer must ensure that there is at least one worker assigned as a competent person who is trained and capable of identifying existing asbestos hazards at the workplace, is assigned to determine if hazards exist, is qualified to supervise workers, and has the authority to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate a hazardous exposure to asbestos. Employees must follow their organization's safety procedures for AC pipe and wear the required personal protective equipment. Studies have shown that done properly, using engineering controls such as the wet method along with scoring and snap tools, will control or prevent the release of asbestos fibers below the OSHA exposure level. However, this does not mean we walk away from the use of protective clothing and equipment. Careful thought must be given when considering the choices in personal protective equipment and if it is required. Using a powered carbide cutoff saw has been shown to generate levels as high as 1,000 fibers per cc of air, or 10,000 times the current allowable OSHA exposure limit. Selection of PPE is based upon the tasks to be performed, as well as industrial hygiene testing to determine the levels of asbestos, if any. Again, depending upon the exposure levels, PPE might include disposable coveralls, gloves, respiratory protection, foot protection such as rubber boots or shoe coverings, as well as safety glasses or any other equipment necessary for the job. Be sure to carefully clean or dispose of equipment so asbestos does not get tracked into the office, truck cab, or home. Never under any circumstances use an air hose to remove asbestos cement dust from your equipment or your clothing, and by the way, be sure to wash your hands before eating or drinking to avoid ingesting asbestos-containing materials. Before starting work, be sure your organization has an AC pipe plan. This plan is important to document activities and plan for work to be performed in the safest way possible. Important aspects of a good plan might include, but not be limited to, establishing a work area using warning tape, signage, barricades, fencing, or other means to keep unauthorized people away. Monitoring the job, allowing only trained and authorized workers into the area. ensuring that no access is allowed into the permitted area without the required personal protective equipment. Planning the job to avoid cutting pipe by the use of full-length pipe and couplings. Establishing a waste containment area is provided where wrapped pipe and debris can be contained. Ensuring that the competent person inspects and supervises workers to ensure that work activities are performed properly and workers are following safe work practices. In most cases, pipe will need to be exposed by the use of a backhoe or other equipment, so take care to avoid abrading the pipe to prevent fiber release. Remember to wet the pipe with amended water as you go to prevent fiber release. Amended water is water that has a surfactant, such as a small amount of liquid soap, to make the water a bit sticky. Be sure there's enough room for saddles, tapping machines, cutters, and of course, your containment system. A lot of gaskets and packing materials used in years past contained asbestos, so take care to keep them wet and handle carefully to avoid damage and the release of asbestos fibers as well. When possible, pipe should be removed intact. Never damage or crush pipe to make it easier or more convenient. Always wet and wrap each pipe section as it's removed. Be sure that the plastic wrap is securely fastened and taped to close the pipe ends. It's a good idea to use a thick paint or other special coating product to seal the cut ends or broken sections to prevent fiber release. Place an asbestos warning label on the pipe and stockpile the waste on plastic and containerize in a designated area. If cutting pipe is necessary, only use equipment that doesn't generate dust, such as a snap cutter or other specialized equipment. A snap cutter contains a set of cutting wheels on a chain that's wrapped around the pipe. Hydraulic pressure is applied by squeezing the wheels into the pipe wall until the pipe breaks. Be sure to keep a constant spray of amended water on the cut at all times. One word of caution: carbide-tipped cutting blades should never be used to cut AC pipe due to the potential of fiber release. Field lathes are designed to trim and bevel pipe in order to replicate the factory bevel. Lathes are usually operated by hand, electric, or pneumatic power in order to trim and bevel the pipe. Again, keep the cutting area wet, as these devices can release extensive levels of respirable asbestos dust. Wet taps are used for service connections, such as saddles and corporation stops, while the pipe is under pressure. The chamber protects against water leakage, creating a dust-free operation. Be sure to treat the coupon as you would any other AC debris, wrapping and disposing of it properly. Dry tapping for service connections may be performed in or out of the trench. Like the wet tap, the equipment is attached with a yoke. It's important to prevent dust generation, so this method will require an amended water spray to prevent asbestos dust from being released. Be sure to flush with water, wet pipe, or use a HEPA vacuum to remove debris. Never dry sweep or blow out AC debris with compressed air under any circumstances. There are some cases where abrasive tools and saws might be necessary for working with AC pipe. However, these tools must be specially designed by the manufacturer with a continuous supply of water in order to eliminate or control dust. Remember, these methods should only be used when approved by your organization and only for a short period of time by trained personnel with a continuous source of pressurized water. Never jury-rig a spray unit on any equipment not designed by the manufacturer for the work with AC pipe. Cleanup and proper disposal is highly important for safely working with AC pipe. We've mentioned it several times, but just in case you missed it, remember, in all AC pipe work, avoid creating dust. Good housekeeping and control of waste can be handled by covering the ground with a leak-tight layer of 6 mil or more plastic. All debris should be kept wet, but not so wet as to generate runoff. You might also leave any disposable garments and gloves in the containment as well. After finishing the work, the plastic should be carefully folded and sealed to prevent leakage. Use another layer of plastic around the first layer to control accidental spillage, and be sure to attach the proper warning label. Warning labels must be affixed to all scrap, waste, debris, and other asbestos-containing materials and debris, as well as the containers they will be stored in. Be sure to plan for a special location to store your waste AC pipe that has also been lined with 6 mil plastic. Remember, wherever there is work that might generate pipe dust or debris, labels or signs must be clearly posted so that employees will be notified of the hazard. Properly disposing of hazardous waste is mandatory, and your local hazardous waste agency can provide you with guidance for the proper disposal procedures. We already know that any tool or practice that has the possibility of producing dust must never be used, as there is a high probability that dust will be generated beyond the permissible or short-term exposure limits, therefore must never be used under any circumstances. Of course, we know not to dry sweep or use air to blow AC pipe debris, right? Using these or other methods is not only improper, it can be deadly, and not just to you and your coworkers. You can unknowingly bring asbestos fibers home to your family on your clothing, boots, and by many other ways as well. Think about it. You come home and your kids run up to hug your dusty clothing. They've just been exposed, and so is your wife when she handles your clothes in order to wash them. Yes, there have been cases where the family members of workers have contracted asbestos-related diseases, including cancer. Always the procedures adopted by your organization and as mandated by OSHA. You might also obtain and read a helpful booklet developed by the American Water Works Association entitled Work Practices for Asbestos Cement Pipe. This publication can provide valuable information for installing or maintaining asbestos cement pipe using safe techniques. The asbestos found in AC cement pipe is a hazardous material, but you can make using and handling the product safer by following the rules and taking time to work safely. Every job can be done in a safe and healthy manner. It just takes a bit of effort and commitment on your part, and being aware of the hazards and adopting safe work practices is the key. You and your family is worth the effort. Thank you.